Okay, so part two, talking about, something that's really influenced me in my spiritual walk is NDEs, near death experiences, and spiritual experiences in general. And I've had experiences, and Christians are super cautious about some of these things. And and it's not bad to be cautious about it. Um, and again, I have to fundamentally say, I don't know what the hell is going on with all this stuff. It's definitely affirmed a bigger cosmos to me, a bigger, it's moved me further and further away from something like scientific materialism and more into a spiritual, a recognition of the sort of spiritual uh, ground of reality. And I've done videos on that, something, a spirit-based uh, worldview. So I'm not going to get into that. But I just totally blanked out. Where was I going with all this? Sometimes I talk myself out. NDEs. And one thing, just because this is kind of an active question for me in my mind, a lot of these issues that I've explored um, in this video, in the previous video, I think they're having genuine experiences. I know because I've had a lot of visionary experiences, moving through different realms, interacting with different beings in these other realms, and the map of saying this is all just one's psychology. I have to say, if you've really deeply experienced a lot of this stuff, that map just doesn't make a lot of sense because you're interfacing with other beings who are giving novel responses. You're having conversations and, evidencing with every bit of, what's the word? Evincing every hallmark of having their own autonomous subjectivity when you're interacting with these other beings. In other words, responses and behaviors and actions that are not the kinds of things that one's mind you would expect would produce, unless we totally just get out of the realm of any conventional definition of subjectivity and mind. And, this is where terminology becomes interesting and useful to define and also kind of tricky and prohibitive in some ways. All of my experiences show me that there's a lot more to creation than this apparent physical reality. And I can say all the time that I've spent, just because I've been so magnetized to these issues for a variety of reasons, one of which is I'm suffering and in pain and trying to find relief. But yeah, it's just, as much time as I spent to get my college degrees, I've spent way more time on these issues. So there's a kind of, maybe we don't have to use the term expertise, but I've been around these issues for a long time and dedicated a lot of time and interest into exploring all of this. And so when I synthesize all that information and I map it against my own experience, things that I've experienced in my own intelligence, and trying to create some kind of coherent understanding of what's going on here, I see it as there is a cosmic that creation is infinite. Let's say it that way. Creation is infinite. And it's almost as if each of us are these particularizations, these condensations, these crystallizations, these individuations of that infinity particularizing into a form. Formless infinity, God, God's self, beyond any category. Which, by the way, there are Christian theologians that define God that way as well. Ground of being, not susceptible to any kind of conceptualization, but eternally, perpetually beyond. Eternal, infinite. I mean, impossible to comprehend with a limited mind, with words, with concept. It's beyond all of that. And these are things you can access experientially rather than conceptually. Anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But and that between that formlessness, the depth of being, and the particular manifold variety, diversity and multiplicity of forms, this created order, there are many layers, increasingly more subtle. The rigidity of form starts to dissipate the deeper you go. But there are many layers of creation. But it's interesting that people have these NDEs. I guess I was just kind of riffing on all of that to say, I do believe that people are having legitimate experience. I don't think it's, scientific reductivism or material reductivism, that it all boils down to neurological processes and neurons, dendrites, synapses, neurochemicals, brain chemistry, brain matter. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. Experientially, even just the further I get, it just seems like it makes sense how we've gotten to that point, and the brain certainly plays a role in all of this. But when you start with the presupposition of scientific materialism that matter is fundamental, that there's nothing beyond the physical realm, what's empirical, what can be weighed, tested, etc., even if we don't yet have the implements to do it, everything is within the realm of material, observable, weighable, empirical, etc. And you start with that as your kind of axiomatic or baseline assumption about reality. It makes sense that you're going to localize all subtle phenomena in matter as an epiphenomenon, as a byproduct of matter. But for many reasons, I just think it's the wrong paradigm. I think people are having genuine experience that you leave the body, that it's like we've got these layers of bodies. You could say a spiritual body, maybe multiple layers of spiritual bodies, and that when you die, or when you pass on, or you have traumatic experience, or even, at night, even in just non-traumatic spiritual experience, you realize that physicality is not what we think it is, that you can go into these subtler realms. And the reason why some of this stuff is interesting to me is because it's experiential. And I verified these things with my own experience many times, many times run this experiment. Now, I don't often hear people coming back from these profound, life-changing near-death experiences talking about God being a huge stickler for certain prescriptive moral tenets, like homosexuality being an abomination or something. That's usually not the message. They usually come back with this very with the message of God being overwhelming love. Yes, there are hell experiences. I've had an experience myself, horrific and wretched. And yes, people do come back from NDEs and go down a very traditional Christian walk. But if we're going to be honest and survey the whole field, there is a wide variety, and not all these NDEs come back affirming the Bible as the one, inerrant. The Bible is the inerrant word of God, or infallible. I forget the correct terminology here. And in fact, Jesus often shows up and just showers people with love and says, "You're here to bring goodness to people. Don't be so serious. Don't take things so seriously. Love on people. Be with them. Love God. Serve God." And so, if we're going to be honest, there's a lot of variety in those experiences. Jesus shows up a lot in it. I happen to be somebody who loves Jesus. Most of the kind of traditional ways of viewing Jesus make a lot of sense to me, actually. Did he rise from the dead? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I think it's possible. In fact, I think the Shroud of Turin is a remarkable testament potentially to that. That's a bigger topic, but I'm not somebody for whom I would say miracles are impossible. No, not at all. Again, what we call physicality is sort of the wrong framing of all this. It's all spirit. It's all God, how I see it. Now, Christians that are going to have an allergic response to saying something like that. And there's wisdom there too, because you can go so far in that other direction of all is love, all is God, love is love, that you become completely unmoored to discipline. You completely just, again, abandon yourself to affirming every wicked proclivity that you have inside yourself for self-gratification, self-affirmation. And I don't believe that for a second. I think that is the path to hell. Overindulgence, hedonism, that is a perhaps worse kind of hell than, that is hell, because it's a false god, and these are kind of avoidance strategies for dealing with one's own pain. So I don't endorse any of that, and there is too much of that in the kind of New Age, and where we just embrace everything. Everything it's all good, it's all love, it's all God. Not at all. Not everything conduces to health, and in fact, I think a true spiritual path takes a lot of discipline, takes a lot of honesty, is really takes a lot of integrity, and is not just some free-for-all, banquet or something like that. And again, there's a shadow side to that, because it's also not just some grim, white-knuckling, self-flagellating, super restrictive, puritanical, rigid, ascetic, monk-like thing either. Now, the point is to be healed, to feel abundant peace, abundant joy, abundant grace, but true grace that comes from truly dealing with one's wounds, not just getting stuck in self-obsession and self-indulgence. And yeah, and also the kind of sloppy mishmash of every religion is the same. I don't agree with that. Now, are there pearls of wisdom in many traditions? Of course. Christianity, it'd be insane to think Christianity has a monopoly on all wisdom. No, if it's true, it's independently true of any category, or, it's not like there's Christian wisdom, there's Buddhist wisdom. No, if it's true, it's true, right? That's the hallmark of true. It's unchanging, unswerving. Before Christianity was, the truth had to be, right? Now, a religious system, a church or whatever, can be a vehicle to point you in that direction and to come into right relationship with the truth, with God. Of course, yeah, that's true, but so, introversion. That was the thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah, it's in the context of, I've been having some challenges at work and just in my life in general. Part of being an introvert, one of the hallmarks of, I guess the hallmark of it, what makes it introversion versus extroversion, is an energetic thing. It's like for introverts, we get very burnt out and tired, and our batteries get depleted. Too much socializing, too much stimulation, being out in social contexts. And so we need to recharge, and we do that in solitude. We recharge by ourselves. Extroverts seem to thrive and live off of social interaction and to get recharged that way, in a social exchange, social milieu. But it's funny because I hesitate to even tell people I'm an introvert sometimes, even though or to use that terminology. Not that it's not apparent how I am in the world, but people hear it, and especially extroverts. Bless your hearts. Sorry, I don't mean to be patronizing, but it's like a scarlet letter or a disease or something. And there's just a lot of misunderstandings about it, because I had somebody tell me at work the other day, I was talking to him, trying to explain some of this. He said, "Oh yeah, I used to be an introvert, and it's something I overcame. I overcame that phase, and I didn't like people, and I overcame that." And it's like, that's really not what introversion is about. Introversion isn't shyness. They can be comorbid, to use that terminology. You can be shy and also be an introvert, but that's not what introversion is. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with shyness. I mean, just purely looking at introversion, that doesn't have anything to do with shyness one way or the other. It doesn't have to do with hating people, hating the world or something like that. It's not misanthropy, is that the word? And so, but this world, by and large, is an extroverted world. That's another thing about evangelical versus, something more orthodox like a Catholic church or something, or high liturgy type of churches, is, man, those evangelical churches 1,000 feet out, you just feel the extroverted energy assaulting you. They're very extroverted spaces. Catholic church just temperamentally feels much more soothing and peaceful to that part of my being. But yeah, it's an extroverted world, and so you make accommodations and find ways to, I guess, manage your introversion, your need for private time. But I work in a place where I'm dealing with customers all day, and then we've got, all the people on our team and stuff like that. And I do my best, I think. I try. But I don't, first of all, I think it's a gift in many ways that I don't really need or even really want a lot of interaction with people. I love my own peace. I'm fine just being out there, doing my thing in my own flow, talking or not talking, just letting things envelop. I'm not like needing to interact or to engage or to, I think that's a gift. That's something that's good. It's a really good thing to have that for many reasons. And part of that is because of all the spiritual work I've done and meditative work and dealing with my own stuff, that I'm not as clingy and desperate. And there's a way in which, wounded bits of our psychology can map onto all of these things, like a temperamental disposition, and amplify certain things. But most of the people I work with are definitely extroverts. And the other part of it is I don't like to gossip. There's nothing good that comes from it. It's like a false intimacy that you build with people. But one minute you're in, the next minute you're under the bus, and it's brutal. It's like a roller coaster. There's no stability in it. It's like a drug in a sense. It just causes all kinds of manipulative things and two-facedness and lack of integrity. And it's hurtful. It's toxic. It's unhealthy. It's hard to have trust. Somebody's going to have your back, or trust with somebody when you know that they're gossiping to you, because it's like, oh, they're going to just gossip to me about this person. It feels good because they're not gossiping about me. Ooh, there's that intimacy, right? And I'm the one that they trust. But part of your soul, I think, recognizes like, ooh, if I step out of line, if I don't, totally fall in line with this relationship or something, then I'm going to be that person that they're talking shit about. And so it's hard to build a truly authentic and trusting relationship with gossip. Anyways, it's so endemic in society. It's such an important thing to talk about. So few people talk about it. It's hard to talk about it without sounding puritanical or something, but man, it's bad stuff. I just don't see a whole lot of good, or if any good. Maybe there's some good things, I don't know, that come from it. But I just do everything I can to avoid it, even to the point where I actively, when someone brings that to me, I will use that as an opportunity to say, hey, I hear you. I just really don't want to talk about this person without them being here. Or I'll say something like, have you brought this up to them directly in person? I'll do something to kind of reflect it back and not just kind of be complicit in the whole interaction. That can be exhausting too, that kind of having to be on guard and do this kind of Aikido and jujitsu and stuff. That can be exhausting, but it's a value that I think has, by and large, done more good for me than not. But it means that, when 90%, 95% of the conversations people are having is just talking shit about other people, bitching about stuff. That's another thing. Negativity is so endemic in the world. It's a really easy habit to just get stuck in, just constantly fault finding and complaining and framing everything. There's people that you bring up the most innocuous subject, kindest subject, the sweetest subject, the most uplifting, positive subject, and they find a way quickly, just default mode, into making it just this really negative rant, inveighing against, ranting against, I like that word, inveigh, ranting against whatever, bitching about whatever. And so part of it is like good mental hygiene. It's like if you're putting crap food into your body, of course your body's not going to be doing well. If you're putting a lot of unhealthy conversation and stuff, energy, that can't be good for you, right? Now I swing too far to the other direction, so I struggle with the balance there, but of being too rigid and kind of puritanical about this value. But I'm just bringing it up because, yeah, most of the conversations are bitching about something, upset about something, bitching about someone, gossiping, shit talking. And so I feel repulsed by that. I feel repelled away from that. And so, yeah, it does put you kind of as an odd man out, you know? And that doesn't feel great, especially because then that amplifies for people. You become the object of gossip, right? It's such a hard thing and unaddressed thing that we don't talk about. That when it's not like I'm on some crusade or something. I just don't want to be involved in it. It's not like I'm actively going out against it. I just don't want to be actively pulled into it, you know? I just want to do my own thing. Be kind, yes. I mean, there are a few people I talk to, they tend to be older. There's this older guy I work with. We talk about the weather. Boring old weather. I like sports. Let's talk about sports. Let's talk about sports, man. Or just, how was your day off? What'd you do? Just simple stuff, man. Simple stuff. But it's like, what was that term? Excuse the expression, pissing into the wind, swimming upstream. It's futile in a sense. You're not going to change the world. Not this world. You're not going to change. Hopefully at some point I'll have a better employment situation. But this is what it is right now. And by better, I mean less people and potentially a less toxic, unhealthy environment. And this isn't the most toxic possible environment, not even close. But it's just so endemic in human nature that it's like, yeah, it's like trying to swallow the ocean with a straw or something. I mean, there's just so much of it. The scale of it is so staggering. Anyways, and so what I try to do, not even really try at this point, just seems like how I've aligned my life, oriented my life, magnetized my life in this direction, is I try to talk to people directly. When there's an issue, I try to go to them and have a conversation. I try to be skillful. I try to be kind. I try to be direct. I try to be calm. I try my best to be fair, to be honest. Sometimes I get a little bit heated, and sometimes I think that's appropriate. Because people are so immature, so unscrupulous with a lot of this stuff that sometimes you have to be a little bit fierce. But it's a lose-lose situation. Like I had this situation with this guy. And a lot of it too is there's something with me. I had a really bad, like traumatic, I could say, injuries. I don't know quite the right way to talk about this, but to my nervous system a number of years ago that kicked off a lot of this spiritual stuff for me. And from which, and it hurt myself. It was a very hurtful experience psychologically, spiritually, and also physically, and with my nervous system in particular, where when somebody does something negative to me, it always comes kind of, it's like my nervous system just goes haywire. And so it's hard for me to respond in the moment because my nervous system goes so crazy. It's, in some sense, it's probably better that I don't respond in the moment and I kind of take a beat and I try to regulate before and figure out what I want to say and try to express myself in a good way. But that is just so out of step. Try to think of a good comparison here. I can't think of a good non-judgmental way to say this, but it's just, I guess you could say, and again, forgive me, this sounds very self-righteous and judgmental, but in a less conscious environment, if I could use that kind of terminology, less healed environment, people just, it's sort of dysfunctional in a way, what I try to do. The functional reality in a place like this is to be kind of a dick to pop off at people, to trying to think of a good way to express. It's hard for me to even connect with this stuff. Just it's not really part of my emotional vocabulary or psyche. But like, well, I can say it in negative terms. It's not to have an adult conversation. It's not to try to express oneself and to be vulnerable and to be, you know, or not even vulnerable, but just to kind of, say, this is what's going on for me, you know, and to have a conversation. I know that sounds, wow, isn't that revolutionary? But the ethos here and the kind of prevailing norm is just to be brutal towards each other. And then when the person's out of earshot, to torch them, you know?